Ready or not?
Right. We'll call this meeting to order, January 2nd, 2024. Please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Happy New Year. Hard to believe it's 2024 already. We will kick this off first, Commissioners, with the approval of the agenda. If there's not any corrections or additions, I would entertain a motion for approval. Motion by Commissioner Richards. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous. Next item up for discussion today is the election of the chairman. At the beginning of every year, the board must elect a chairman. And I would open that up to any conversation or nominations.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Tillman.
I would like to nominate Keaton West as chairman.
We do have a nomination for myself as chair by Commissioner Tillman and her excellent Christmas gift that is a rubber gavel. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
move to close nominations.
We do have a motion to close nominations by Commissioner Richards. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones.
Chairman? Oh, we have to vote. Sorry.
All in favor of closing, say aye.
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 Mr.
Opposed, nay.
Chairman,
Commissioner Tillman.
I would move to accept you as chairman by acclamation.
We have a motion to approve Commissioner West as chairman by Commissioner Tillman. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Richards. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Motion carries. Thank you all. It has been a pleasure to be your chairman for 2023, and I look forward to continuing on. It would be an impossible task without all of your dedication. So I appreciate that vote of confidence and thoroughly look forward to bringing in another year with you all and what you've done. So thanks for that. And with that, we'll get started right away.
Thank you for all you've done.
Next on the agenda is tab B. We've got a public hearing today for a budget amendment under resolution 24-01-CL-01 for facilities, land use, and road and bridge capital projects. With us this morning is Clerk Lane. Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. Happy New Year. What you have before you is Resolution 24-01-CL-01 for expenditures in, excuse me, facilities, land use, and road and bridge departments that were approved by the County Commissioners on December 5th of 2023. It is now moving the money for the projects from the increased general fund of facilities parks by $50,995, land use $15,000, road and bridge $15,000, with a general county reserves decrease from facilities of $80,995.
Thanks, Clerk Lane. Any questions for Cindy on this resolution, Commissioners? If not, we do need to have a public hearing. So at this time, we would open the public hearing for anyone that would like to speak to resolution 24-01-CL-01. Anyone in the audience or online that would like to speak to this, now would be the appropriate time. Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. And Commissioners, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to amend the facilities, land use, and road and bridge departments within the general fund of Sweetwater County's 2023-24 budget in the amount of $80,995 due to funding needed for capital projects.
Do you have a motion to approve this resolution by Commissioner Slaughter? Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Richards. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Appreciate it. Next on the agenda, Commissioners, is county resident comments and concerns. This time, if there's anyone, again, online or in the audience that would like to approach the governing body on any issues, now would be the appropriate time. Got one ahead of you, but we'll call on you next.
Okay.
Morning.
Good morning. Candy Pendleton with Sweetwater Benz Complex. I actually wanted to give a quick thanks to County Clerk, John DeLeon, County Attorney, Commissioner West, Mark Cowan. I had this harebrained idea a few months ago to do this training, right? And Commissioner Chairman West knows what I'm talking about, but I wanted to do this training for our board members that would meet the public officers training. And I thought I had this simple solution. And so I contacted a lady in Jackson, wonderful lady, Mary Martin. She does them all over the state, but I didn't quite realize that it was going to take as much time as it is for our elected officials to join into that conversation. So just a quick shout out and thank you for everybody for jumping in and helping us do that. And that's on January 11th. So thanks to everybody that had a part in that. And I know it was a bigger deal than we expected.
Yeah, no problem. We appreciate you finding a solution for that and bringing it home. It did feel a little bit like a setup. No, not really, but it'll be a nice change for a different menu format from something other than BLM discussions. So I got some homework to do in preparation for the 11th, but I look forward to that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Candy.
Candy, I have a question. Can you send a flyer or something? Because like I've been telling my liaisons, like the airport, I know they already know, but Young at Heart wanted to send some of their people.
I think they're on the list. So we sent it to everybody that Gary McLean had, and then
Oh,
the Farson
okay.
districts reached out. So I believe everybody has received the information. County Clerk Lane is making, getting the bylaws for all those groups. So I believe it's all in the works, but
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
no problem.
Thanks, Candy. Anyone else that would like to address? Come on up, sir. Please state your name for the record. Good morning to you.
Hi, my name is Cleve Holloway, and my concerns is that the BLM RMP guidelines. What I've heard is that over 1,000 residents have been rejected or not accepted in their comments with BLM. I do not know if that's true or not. That's what I've heard. And I wanted to know the proper guidelines or outline or format to use to make sure that the submission is done properly to the BLM. And I was wondering, could something be printed in either the Rocket Miner or the Green River newspaper so that the public will know exactly what they should use? I stopped by the BLM office last week, and the person in charge of that, I asked them, could you tell me the proper procedure? And they did not have anything written or post it. I said, well, could you just write it out on a one-page piece of paper or print something out, just one page like A, B, C, or D, the proper way to file, and maybe on one page put the ways that you will be rejected or not accepted, so that we know that we're not doing that, and they could not respond or give me the proper procedure. And I was wondering, do you have any comments or suggestions on what can be done?
Yeah, absolutely. We can, reach out with our media partners on some of that information as well. I know Commissioner Jones has had a couple public comment workshops, and they were talking about having another one, but we can get you that information. We have it. It's got to be substantive comments, which is probably why some of those that you speak to have been thrown out, because if they're not substantive in the terms of what the BLM is looking for, then they won't even, waste their time with that. But yeah, we can find that information. We have it and be happy to share it with you.
All right. How can I get it from you then on it?
If you want to grab a business card, I can contact you, or we can talk at break.
Okay,
and-
that's what I'll do then.
Yeah.
All right. And it would be, I think it's not right that all of these people who have commented, I asked them also at BL, are these people notified that did submit that their comments were not accepted? Did you notify them that they did something wrong or did it was wrong? And the BLM official said, no, we do not contact the people that did not accept. And I don't think that's a proper procedure too. You should be, they should be notified that something's not right in it or that it looks like it's arbitrary and capricious the way the BLM has set this whole procedure up.
Yeah, and they're supposed to have it on their website as well, as far as where you can go to fill out the comments.
Okay.
And so we can assist you with that, and we appreciate your interest in it and for coming before us because it is very important. It's been an interesting process. I think most of us have learned, a great deal from how it all works and the
That's
different
right.
rules
That's
within.
right.
So we appreciate your involvement in that. Other
Okay.
comments, Commissioner Jones?
Mr. Chairman, yes. So we have had some workshops and we will probably do another workshop next week. We haven't settled on a date, but yes, please get a business card.
Okay, that's all.
So we can be in touch with you. And we can certainly either give you the link that explains how to properly send in a comment, or we can print off a piece of paper. That's what we did at the last workshop. So we had some of those printed off. So people would read them and have them in their hand. But one way or another, we can definitely get you the information and help you out. And if somebody has already submitted a comment, they can continue to submit more comments. So just because you've turned one in doesn't mean you're done. It's not a one and done thing. So if anybody thinks their comment might have been thrown out or got wind of it or whatever the case may be, I would encourage them to please fill out more comments and turn them in, because there's, as far as I know anyway, there's no limit on the number you can turn in.
All right. Thanks for your information.
You bet.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. We appreciate you
Okay.
coming over this morning. Happy New Year to you. Still under the county resident comment and concerns portion. Is there anyone else? Morning, Mr. Martin.
This is new for me. Well, not necessarily, but I'm usually the one behind the mic in front of it. Anyway. Good morning. My name is David Martin. I'm the news director at Sweetwater now. And I'm approaching you today because later this morning, you'll be making a choice on a official newspaper for the county to put all your legals in. And it's generally the first meeting of the year. The commissioners do this. They get up, talk about circulation numbers, their total coverage, all that fun stuff. Anyway, winds are changing, and we're interested at Sweetwater now to also publish legals because we feel that we have the largest audience of any publication in Sweetwater County. We also believe that they would be much more effective in our publication than any others. To attempt to drive this point home, I did a few searches on the Wyoming Press Association's public notice website. They have a website where you can look up notices from throughout Wyoming. All the different newspapers post things. You can from Basin to Cheyenne. Yeah. And in particular, I was looking for a document called a statement of ownership, which are published each September, by the end of September, and detail things that, for example, circulation, paid circulation, which is, how many subscribers you've got, your subscription cost, who owns the newspaper, so on and so forth. And I was unable to be able to present hard numbers as far as our local newspapers circulation. Reason being, the most recent statement of ownership I found for the Green River Star was on that website was September 30th, 2021. Had my signature on it because I was the editor at the time. And then for the Rocket Miner, I went all the way back to 2012 and I couldn't find anything. So These are published in the newspapers. I'm not going to say they're not there, but they're not online and they're not as viewable as they probably should be. And the reasons for that, I really can't answer that question. That said, I'm interested in opening a dialogue with the county and coming up with a mutually beneficial agreement where we could publish your legals at a cost-effective rate, because I know that is one of your most important duties, is making sure you're safeguarding the public taxpayer funds that come into the organization. And simply start working towards having more competition and hopefully better service for Sweetwater County and the publication of their legals. So,
Thanks, David. Appreciate that. I believe statutorily it has to be a newspaper of record.
that is correct. There is a lawsuit between the Casper Star Tribune and the towns of Mills and bar none, I believe, that may change that. There's also been attempts with the legislature. One of the things I think that would be beneficial for a legislator to know is how much more widely circulated and read they would be online through a digital publishing company like Sweetwater now. And that's another reason why I'd like to have these published, digitally, so we can provide that information to our legislators so they can make a more informed decision as to if they should remain in print or if it should spread beyond that.
Yeah, I know it's been taken up, a handful of times at the legislature, and it remains as is for the time being. And there are times where it is difficult, when newspapers are only printed, once or twice a week. It can be difficult to, get the word out, or, have to prepare an agenda essentially a week in advance. So there are some constraints with that, but
Mhm.
I think from our perspective, there's not a whole lot we can do as far as changing statutes.
Right.
I think
But
more.
that also
would
doesn't,
be-
oh, excuse me. I
That's okay.
apologize. That also doesn't mean that, you're locked to only doing it
Sure.
in print. So, and
Understood.
again, I
Any other-
apologize for jumping on you like that.
It's okay. Any other feedback, commissioners?
Well, we've had extensive discussions in the past. It's because of the legislation and we don't want to have to pay double, for
course.
legal notices. So get the legislators to change the
Well,
law.
I-
If you can get them to change the law, then we can do.
I'll be in contact with them, certainly. It's. Any other questions?
Any other comments, commissioners? Well, we
Thank you.
appreciate you coming before us, and we'll see what happens in the future. But for now, it seems like, we're forced to go through newspaper of record, and yeah, I think as Commissioner Toman alluded to, it may help get the word out, but there's a cost associated with both. So
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
yeah, thank you. Still under the county resident comments and concerns portion of the agenda. Is there anyone else online or in the audience who would like to address the governing body? Seeing and hearing none, we'll go ahead and close the county resident comments and concerns portion of the agenda. And commissioners, that's going to move us right along into tab C. Tab C is the consent agenda, and we have 8 items before you this morning. First being the approval of the December 19th, 2023 minutes, the approval of the county vouchers, warrants, EALs, and the commissioner's report, approval of bonds, a request to restaff a vacant position in the custodial department, a request to restaff 2 vacant positions in the sheriff's office, a request to restaff a vacant position in the clerk's office, ratifying a resolution, which is resolution 23-12-CL-01 for the county attorney's budget amendment. This is the one that they had to redo the public notice on because there was a little mistake there between the sheriff's office and the attorney's office, if you recall from our last meeting. So we're just ratifying that. And then lastly is the Ratification of draft comments on the programmatic solar energy plan revision administrative DEIS. Commissioners, if you've had a chance to review these consent agenda items, I would ask if there's any discussion on them. If not, what's your pleasure?
Mr. Chairman, I would move to approve the consent agenda.
Got a motion to approve the consent agenda by Commissioner Toman. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous. Moving right along is Commissioner comments, and Commissioner Jones, you're up first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My comments will be very, very brief due to the holidays, and that will allow Commissioner Tillman some extra time to speak.
Thank you. I just appreciate all that respect I get.
I did take a week off during between Christmas and New Year, spend time with family and friends. So that's part of the reason my report is so short. But on December 20th, attended a full day BLM RMP task force meeting. I think everyone basically works very well together. I think we have some good conversations. It's a good group of people, well-intentioned, and I think we will have some good comments for the governor when it's all done and said. Was a full day meeting, so I won't bore everybody with the details of 8 hours worth. Due to that meeting, I was unable to attend the Memorial Hospital Sweetwater County Quality Committee meeting. But then on December 27th, I was fortunate enough to attend another BLM RMP meeting via Zoom. More progress was made. The governor gave a brief comments about our progress. Naturally, I've had many phone calls, conversations, what have you around the BLM. So even though my report is brief, my hours were not, but that concludes my report.
I hear you there. Thanks, Commissioner. Any comments or questions for Commissioner Jones's report?
Don't ever call it short when you spend that many hours.
Yeah, I've got a similar response, similar situation. I too took the week off between the holidays and enjoyed some downtime with family and trying to recharge the batteries as we come right back into the full swing of things here for 2024. But mainly all BLM. I too was at the task force meeting on the 20th. That makes for a very long day. There's just a tremendous amount of documents and management actions to go through, and lots of good discussion. But it's difficult when you have 11 members trying to agree on some form of a compromise. Some of those can take hours to get through. So it's been an interesting process. I also was on attendance for a couple hour meeting on the 27th, and just kind of more of the same there. They've shifted a little bit rather than just being within the document itself. They've asked for, any input from task force members that you may have a broad statement that's important to their respective fields that they're representing. And then finding, management actions within the plan that best represent those statements and, offering an alternative that supports that. So that's taken quite a bit of time upon everyone, because we're quickly approaching the end of the extension for the public comment period. So as Commissioner Jones pointed out, we now have what was just an all-day meeting this Friday is also an all-day meeting on Thursday. So 2 full days on a short week and on a commission meeting week. So it's been a lot, and we still have about 220 or so management actions to get through. So hopefully some good reports come out of that, and we'll continue to work together where we can. In the meantime, Sweetwater County and the Coalition of Local Governments is also working on their comments, and we'll hear more about that today. Eric and John and Danielle have been extremely busy and have a lot of good information to report. So look forward to having that discussion as well as we get closer to the deadline on the 17th. FYI, Eric is looking to have another probably special meeting next week. And we'll go over this more later today when he presents, but it's looking like the 11th perhaps. So give that some thought when you're on break to see what your schedules, or if your schedules may allow for that. But we'll discuss that further. But just trying to, I guess, wrap up some of the different comments and letters that will be submitting to the BLM because that deadline is the 17th and our next meeting is obviously the day before that. So we're trying to get everything ironed out in preparation for that. Most of the boards I liaise to meet the fourth Wednesdays of the month, so they were all canceled due to the holidays. And I've got the mayor and commissioner luncheon tomorrow, so look forward to catching up with them. We all missed it last month due to other conflicts, so I'm looking forward to that. And as Candy pointed out, we got the public officer training on the evening of the 11th, so that'll be another stacked day, it sounds like. Look forward to learning more about that process and how we can streamline that for some of these different requirements. And aside from that, look forward to kicking off another successful year with you all. I appreciate serving as your chair. It is a true honor, and I'm glad proud of the success we've had over the last year. So with that, I'll keep it short and stand for any questions you might have. And with none, we'll hand it over to Commissioner Slaughter.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I'd like to wish everybody a happy new year. 2024 promises to be an exciting and eventful year here in Sweetwater County. We start the year full of hope and promise. I'm looking forward to working with each of you to ensure that we realize the fulfillment of the opportunities that arise during this upcoming year. I too tried to take a week off between. Unfortunately, it didn't really work out that well. I had a lot of phone calls and things of that nature, but I did get to spend a lot of time with family. On the 20th, Jeff Ramay requested some time to thank me for hearing the discussion on election integrity that was presented to us the prior day. Jeff was apologetic for the actions of some of his co-presenters. While he has a strong belief in the action that they presented, he felt that they were treated professionally and fairly. He would like to have further discussion with us in the future. Later that day, I was able to go with assistance from Sally and purchasing and schedule my room for the WCCA meetings that are going to be held in Cheyenne, February 14th through the 16th. I'm looking forward to more interaction with other commissioners around the state and preparing for that legislative session. On the 21st, I met with Roy Lloyd and Augusta Clayton Davis, the coordinator of the Drug Treatment Court. Mr. Lloyd is a board member for that organization. At their request, we discussed potential changes that could be made to help benefit their program. I thought there were some very interesting ideas that their board is considering. One of the big ideas is to better collaborate with the county and more fully utilize resources of the county as it is done in 21 of the other counties around the state. It was just an initial contact meeting. They expressed that they will be requesting contact with other commissioners and will be including Judge Prokos in those discussions. I also spent time later that day with Public Works Director Legursky discussing several projects that are taking place in the county and becoming more informed on the dynamics of the Public Works Department. On the 22nd, I signed new requisition requests for the town of Superior and had a good conversation with Keith Papantino, the representative of the trustee bank for our specific purpose tax, on the distribution of tax funds to our entities and the waterfall nature of how those funds are allocated. It's very confusing. I wanted to make sure that for our next meeting, which will be held next Monday, we have a full explanation of how those funds are being distributed and that all of the entities are fully aware of that process. I believe we're on the same page on the distribution of those SBT funds, and I appreciate the help of Mr. Papantino in doing that. On the 27th, I received a call from Stacy Nelson, who is the chairman of Golden Hour Senior Citizens Board, informing me that Ruth Lauritsen, the Golden Hour executive director, had taken a turn for the worse and that she was no longer a candidate for the surgery that had been scheduled. Ruth had been put on hospice care with her daughter in Las Vegas. On Friday, I received another call from Ms. Jones letting me know, Miss Nelson, excuse me, letting me know that Ruth had passed. She will be greatly missed. She has been a vibrant, active member of our Sweetwater County for many, many years, and I personally offer my condolences. I had a great relationship with Ruth when she was our museum director and think that she was a true asset and a great person here in the county. As I say, she will be missed. I spent the rest of the time between meetings answering various calls from constituents, trying to become more well-versed on many of the things that are taking place around the county, and most importantly, spending time enjoying the holidays with my family and watching a lot of football. I do have the report from Mr. Legursky on Public Works. The Public Works Department buildings, Night Oil Tool Buildings pre-bid walkthrough is on January 3rd. This project will be bid on January 23rd. The Rock Springs Youth Home options were discussed with the City of Rock Springs Building Department, and we received some great feedback from them. The maintenance crew handled 79 work order requests in December. In Road and Bridge, crews are continuing to haul material out to County Road number 23 north to fix soft spots that are developing in the road. We're also hauling and stockpiling material into the lagoon yard so that we can haul it to Hiawatha Road, County Road number 25 this spring. Crews are updating signage and replacing signs that were damaged, AKA shot up all over the county. Engineering, we are still working on small projects and planning for next year's projects. As part of the T2 Advisory Committee and with help from a doctoral student at the University of Wyoming, we have put out a survey that should help quantify county paved roads. This information, along with the pavement management information that is collected every 2 years by T2, will solidify our roadway information and make it easier to quantify pavement conditions and needs rankings. In Parks and Recreation, crews are removing the old water treatment plant from Pioneer Park and salvaging what can be salvaged. They're also working on some winter maintenance items on the ponds at Arrowhead and Jamestown Parks. We're also working on costs for the Trap Club and a new reservation system for soccer, softball, and pavilions to make it fair for everyone and work more like a true reservation system. The cost will be brought to the BOCC later in the winter to have action taken as part of the Wyoming Public Procedures Act. I have notified all of the soccer clubs, and Chris has talked with the softball and baseball clubs about the reservation system not being live at the beginning of the year. We will notify all of them once it's up and running again. Mr. Chairman, with that, I end my comments along with the Public Works comments and would stand for any questions.
Thanks, Commissioner. Good report. I too would echo condolences to Ruth and her family and ask if there's any other comments or questions for Commissioner Slaughter's report. If not, thanks for your work, Commissioner, and we'll hand it over to Commissioner Tillman.
Thank you. And thank you for a great 2023. It's been a great pleasure working with this commission. I feel the energy and I think they do too. They're smart, they're hardworking, and this county is really lucky to have this set of commissioners, and I am very proud to be a part of them. So thanks, and we're looking forward to a great 2024. And that includes you, Keaton, even though you have to give me a hard time.
I'd just like to point out, that is a nice gavel.
I know, I couldn't resist. I just have to.
It's always on me for slamming the gavel, so I got her a nice gift for Christmas.
You have to notice this. It won't even hurt him if I hit him, so, you know. But we do have fun, but it's very serious work, and they are very dedicated. They're spending a lot of hours working for this county, and it's wonderful. Thank you, guys. On 12/19, I attended the Zoom meeting for the Sage Grouse BLM Cooperator meeting. And you just need to note that there are 4 other outstanding plans that will come later that will affect this Rock Springs BLM RMP, the sage grouse, the wild horses, the travel management. I don't know, there's one more. What is it, Taylor? There's 4 things that, the solar programmatic EIS, which we signed comments on today through our coalition, that will overlay whatever happens in this RMP. So this BLM resource management plan is an incomplete plan even when it's done. So there are going to be other layers coming on later, which makes it very frustrating. And I have to tell my fellow task force members, just remember we spent 12 years as cooperators, as your local elected officials, helping to develop this plan to be totally sidestepped and turned over to this task force and asking you to start from scratch. So don't get frustrated. You're jamming in 12 years of work in a few days, and it's greatly appreciated. On the 19th, I also attend the Young at Heart liaison meeting. They seem to be working very hard to get their finances and moving forward with that facility, and they're doing a great job. I'm really proud of them. They want to attend the public officers training, some of their board members. And they also submitted very substantive comments, which I forwarded to this commission for the BLM RMP. We've asked all of our liaison units to comment on this resource management plan because of county funding. is reduced because of decisions made by the Bureau of Land Management on the 70% of our public lands, on all of our minerals. We will all suffer severely if they go through with alternative B. I can't stress that enough. New Year's Eve, I attended the Farson New Year's Eve party with the Sundowner Band. That community is amazing, but I think half of Rock Springs came out there. We had almost 200 people. So it was a fun group. Jeff Ramage had the petition for the property tax relief. Cindy, I'm not sure. He said you sent him out there with the petition. So you might want to comment on that. He said he was sent by Cindy Lane to have people sign the petition on the property tax relief proposal to the legislature. So I just wanted to give you an update on that. Survived New Year's Eve. Did have a good Christmas with my mother, who is now in a nursing home and pretty paralyzed from a stroke. So we got to bring her home for a couple of days. So that was fun. Other than that, I traumatized and stressed over the Rock Springs BLM the whole holiday because I was trying to get the federal partners meeting organized. Chamber of Commerce, thanks Rick Lee, will be hosting our federal partners meeting the first Fridays of every month at 9 a.m. It will be available on Zoom or at the Chamber of Commerce. So we got that information sent out to him to invite them. I also spent time preparing a packet of information, sending out a plea for help with our fellow commissions in Carbon County, Sublette County, and Fremont County. They used to be members of our coalition when their resource management plans were under the gun, and they're not members at the current time. So I sent them a packet of information about the projects that have been completed by the coalition over the last 15, 20 years, and basically asked them for their support in fighting this Rock Springs BLM resource management plan, because it will affect all of us, even though it might not be totally in their counties. I did try to follow up with phone calls. I talked to Sue Jones at Carbon County and John Espy and Dave Stevens, Sublette County, and talked to Janessa Sexton, their BLM or their Sublette County, I don't know what you call it, administrator this morning. So they have received a packet of information asking them to support us, however they choose to do that. And it's especially important they support us because the governor's federal natural resource policy account, they claim to be wanting to help us fight this BLM RMP, and we have not received one dime from them since July 1st through our coalition. The county did not request any funding from them because we were going to fight the RMP through the coalition. So now the county is also paying the coalition lawyers, Danielle Betancourt, to help us prepare comments. So I just want that out there. I'm kind of upset. I called Nolan Rapp, did not receive a call back before Christmas. That is unacceptable. The Federal Natural Resource Policy account is in place to provide funding for local governments to defend these types of actions. And for them not to provide one dime of money is totally unacceptable, as far as I'm concerned. So sorry, that's my true opinion on that item. The last thing I would ask is all of you just pray for peace in the world and in our country as we come into the elections and in a new year. And this country needs help. And we're lucky we live in a great county. And if we don't let the BLM mess it up, we really have a great county. So thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Appreciate your comments and your work. Glad to hear you had a good holiday, and as always, it's good to be passionate too. You put a lot of time into this, so we appreciate your experience and expertise as us newbies are trying to figure it out too. Any comments or questions for Commissioner Tomlin's report?
Mr. Chairman, yes,
Commissioner Slaughter.
I would like to, commend Commissioner Tolman for her passion on these issues. I see it on a daily basis, and it is genuine, and it is definitely put forth in the best interest of Sweetwater County. But I really would like to thank her for her work on trying to get the federal partners and that meeting reset up, working with the Chamber of Commerce in Rock Springs. I think that we're going to have a good venue for that now. I think it opens up the opportunity for all of us now to participate in those meetings if we choose to. And I think it can be something that's extremely beneficial moving forward. So I thank her for all of the efforts in putting that together.
Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any other comments? Commissioner Tomans report? If not, we'll hand it over to Commissioner Richards.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, fellow commissioners. I had a very quiet holiday break and didn't have to attend any meetings, so I kind of feel lazy about that, but I'll take it when I can get it. Over the next couple of weeks, I have a relatively light schedule as well. I plan on attending the federal partners meeting on the 5th. There is no planning and zoning meeting this month. There were no hearings to worry about. On the 10th, I plan on attending the monthly WCCA update, and the library board will meet on the 15th. While the first weeks will be quiet, I expect 2024 to be a busy year, and I wanted to share a couple of my priorities for you that I have this year. One of the big ones I'd like to start the process of exploring the possibility of creating a countywide EMS district to fund and manage ambulance service. There are about 3 to 4 years left in our current contract with Castle Rock, and I think we should take a hard look at the available tools that the legislature gives us to provide for ambulance service. So with your blessing, I'd like to work with Mr. De Leon this year to explore that process. Which reminds me, I'd like to give our constituents a heads up about how Wyoming sunshine laws work. At a previous meeting, we mentioned that we received an email about ambulance service, and after that, a local news agency filed a Freedom of Information Act request for any email to and between county commissioners regarding Castle Rock Hospital District. When we get a request like that, we are bound by law to share our communications with the press. So if you're a constituent with any concerns about what you see happening in Sweetwater County, we do want to hear from you. But I also want you to be aware that any electronic communications you send us are subject to being made public. So don't put anything private that you don't want the public to see in an email to us. Now, email is the most efficient way to get a hold of me. But if you have private things you want to talk about, send that email and ask for a face-to-face meeting. We're always available to meet with you face-to-face. So I just wanted to give everybody a heads up. If you send us an email, it is subject to sunshine laws. Another issue I'd like to focus more on is supporting our Public Works Director and Parks Department in reinventing our county parks, including our shooting facilities. Our parks are way underutilized, and I want to make sure they're getting the attention they deserve so they can be better utilized by our residents. Plenty of other things that I want to accomplish this year, but that's a couple to get started with, and I look forward to working with all of you this year, representing the interests of the people of Sweetwater County. I think that's all I have for you today, Mr. Chairman, and I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thanks, Commissioner. Nyla and I had pretty good chat over the break about just different goals and things that we're looking to improve. Obviously, you run for a reason. It's not a forever job. You want to make some good improvements and move on. So I appreciate, the notion to start digging into, some form of an EMS district. I have not forgot about the request to set up a workshop with Castle Rock's board to discuss some of these issues that are being brought to our attention. Honestly, I'm just trying to get through this BLM task force because it's about an everyday event. So we'll continue to work on that hopefully after this task force concludes, and be happy to support you and obviously encourage you to work with Mr. De Leon as you've highlighted, and any help you may need. I think that's very important to make sure that we have the services there when they're needed. So much appreciation to that. Any other comments for Commissioner Richards' report? If not, that does conclude the commissioner comments. Clerk Lane, did you want to address some of the things Commissioner Toman brought forth?
Thank you, Chairman, Commissioners. As the Chief Election Officer for Sweetwater County, I do not oppose or support any petitions that come through. So I would not send anybody out anywhere with a petition. The only petitions I'm involved in, if it's a local petition, I do have to approve it for it to go on the ballot. So as the petitions come in, if it's a local one, then we have to check to make sure that the persons who signed the petition are registered voters. That is my only role in that petition. So I just wanted to clarify that I do not send anyone out with petitions to any events, as that is not my role in this process.
Well, I thought you should be informed so you can.
Thank
follow.
you. I appreciate
Because
that.
there was a distinct statement made that he was sent by Clerk Lane to ask people.
No.
Or to give people the opportunity to sign the petition regarding property tax.
Well, thank you for letting me know that, and I will address that issue. Thank you.
Thanks, Cindy. Appreciate it. That does conclude commissioner comments, and we are still ahead of schedule. So that's a win for 2024. That'll move us right along into tab D, commissioners, which is the action and presentation items. First up is item number 1, the approval of the abates and rebates. And I believe Assessor Davis may want to offer a brief explanation on one. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Commissioners. Happy New Year. I'm Dave Davis. I'm the Sweetwater County Assessor. Normally, we put the abates and rebates under the consent agenda, but this particular form had a very large abate that went to Wexboro. They had grossly over-reported some equipment values. Didn't find the mistake until the tax bills were actually sent out. They contacted me. I contacted council. We decided the best solution to this issue was to get it right. So we did abate that entire account, and then we spooled on another account to replace that one. Basically just to try and get it right. Again, they had overstated the value on that equipment. It was an account that had 24 different wells on it. Brand new account, brand new tax district. We had no history to compare it to, neither did they. So it was something that just kind of slipped through the cracks. But the reason we're here to talk about it is because the dollar amount was like $1.5 million. And it is just, it's kind of an outlier. Normally we don't see big amounts like that. So I just wanted to come and address the commission on that and answer any questions.
Thanks, Dave. We appreciate that. Any questions for Mr. Davis, commissioners? I think that clarifies it well. Thanks very
Thank you.
much. With that, what's your pleasure, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
move to approve the abates and rebates in the amount of $1,539,972.38.
You have a motion to approve by Commissioner Richards. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous. Next on the action and presentation items is the designation of newspaper of record for 2024. Again, at the beginning of every year, we are required to designate a newspaper of record per state statute. And I would ask for any discussion on this. Actually, why don't we start with those in attendance? Who may want to speak to their proposals. We'll just go in order of how they are in the packet. We've got Rocket Miner up first. If you would like to address the governing body.
As David said, it's a fast-moving world. There may be a day when it is approved to put illegals on digital only. Until that day, we have to operate by the guidelines set forth. Rocket Miner would love to be your newspaper record for the 2024 year. We set our rate at $5 a column inch and extend the same offer we did in 2022. Any non-legal ad for any county agency, it gets buy one, get one free. So in 2022, we think that added value was around $23,000 to the county. Thank you.
Very good. And could you identify yourself just for the record?
Boyd White, General Manager, Rocket Miner.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chairman.
Any questions for the Rocket Miner? Green River Star?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
I'm Jackie Finch, the General Manager at the Green River Star. It has been a pleasure working with the county the past year, publishing your legals. We have always taken pride in our work when publishing the legals, and we have continued to maintain a strong and positive working relationship. The past year, there has been no discrepancies in the billing, and we have had no issues in publishing the legals in a timely manner and making sure you receive all your vouchers, affidavits, invoices, and tear sheets. We are hoping to get the opportunity to publish the legals again for the year 2024. We propose a $6 cost per column inch for the Sweetwater County legals. That's all I have.
Thanks, Jackie.
Any
Appreciate it.
questions?
Any questions, commissioners? Doesn't look like it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Discussion, commissioners.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Toman.
I feel the Green River Star has done a really good job of meeting our short deadlines sometimes and in preparing some of those legal notices. And I would make a motion to designate them as the newspaper of record.
We have a motion to designate the Green River Star for the newspaper of record by Commissioner Toman. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Richards. Discussion.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Slaughter.
While I think that we have had an excellent service from the Green River Star this year, I'd like to question you as to what your belief is. I know that the short timeframes that have been created in being able to publish our agenda have at times been very difficult. So I think I would like to hear from your perspective, you know, whether that has been an issue, whether you think that that's something that we can overcome, whether you think it might be better served with the rocket miner, or what your belief is with respect to that.
No, I appreciate that, Commissioner. I should have asked during asking you if you all had any questions, but it is a challenge. You know, the rocket miner prints twice a week, the Green River Star once a week. And so the deadlines to set the agenda is difficult because we come fresh off of this meeting, and basically by Monday of the following week, which is a week prior to the next meeting, you have to have that agenda set, and you gotta we have to have everything in for the packet in order to meet that publication. So it's a challenge. It's a big challenge trying to fit that in and be flexible with, you know, people who may be waiting on information. A lot of that gets bumped to the next meeting. I don't know. It should have been a question for the rocket miner, you know, when their deadlines would be. I assume the Green River Star is going to remain with that same deadline. Please do, yeah, if you want to address that. I should have asked sooner. Sorry, it's the first of the year. Can you come to the mic? Sorry about that.
I've heard that the agenda is hard sometimes with the time frame, and I would definitely adjust the agenda deadline to Tuesday,
Well, and part of that
given
is,
another day.
yeah, I mean, you guys, we have a deadline because then we now have to have time to get it to you by noon on Tuesday, right? And so if our deadline is Monday at 5 o'clock, then basically, you know, we have 4 hours to get it to you the next morning and review it and seek out questions
Right.
from any department heads or staff on, you know, what this is for. And so to allow, you know, staff enough time to compile all that, it's basically 2 hours. You know, but there's preparation that's from the night of that's still preparing and how to fit it in the agenda. And so there's times it's tough. I mean, it's 11:50 before I can respond, and that's not so fair to staff. So last week asked and, you know, reached out on this. It was a pretty hard deadline because of your printing time.
It is, but I've got to where I can move my job around, and if you needed another whole day or even Wednesday morning to get that agenda, that would be fine with me.
When is the drop dead last?
We send our paper off for publication on Wednesday at 3. And it gets printed in Jackson, and then we pick it up
Okay.
for Thursday's publication.
Okay. But as far as, I mean, you're gonna have to have the same preparation time that we're discussing. So Wednesday at 3, if you're sending it at that time, you would need it Wednesday morning.
Wednesday
or-
morning
Yeah.
instead of Monday.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Tillman.
when we did use the rocket, they had the Wednesday publication date. So basically we had the same timelines.
And I believe the Rocket also publishes on Saturday. Can you guys speak to your deadlines that you would have? I should have asked sooner. I apologize. Thank you, Jackie.
For Wednesday publication, everything has to be through and approved by Friday evening. There is some leeway to Monday morning. For Saturday, it's Tuesday and Wednesday, and there is a little wiggle room for, if we have a heads up, Flo probably could hold it and get it in on Thursday morning, because we print to get it over here on Thursday so they can deliver it bring it on Friday to get in the mail and get it in the boxes. And for Wednesday's paper, it comes on Tuesday. It's printed late Monday night, early Tuesday morning, and carted over on the truck.
So for our meeting today, for instance, would you publish that in Saturdays?
Yes.
And so your deadline for Saturday is when?
To be final deadline Wednesday afternoon.
But you're talking the Wednesday before, not a week
Right.
before, right?
Correct. Yes, sir.
Okay. So yeah, not a whole lot different in that realm.
They're very similar. That's why I would recommend voting for the Star.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
one of the reasons that we accepted Green River's bid last year was problems that our advertising portions of the county had in getting legals published. There were times where public hearings had to be moved because the items weren't published on time. And there were problems with billing during 2022 with the rocket miner and getting the tear sheets that we require. And that was one of the reasons we chose Green River over the rocket miner, even though it was a little more expensive. And what I didn't see in the proposals this year was any assurance from the rocket miner that those issues had been solved. We didn't receive really assurances last year that they'd been solved. And then again, I don't see in their proposal that that they've solved those issues. And for those reasons, I guess I gotta support the Green River Star again.
Thanks, Commissioner. Any other discussion? I guess to answer your question, Rob, it's relatively the same deadline, so
Yeah.
it's
Getting
gonna be a
that
challenge
information
either way.
helps. So thank you.
Oh, Mr. Chairman, we do appreciate your coverage from the Rocket and the fact Trina's here at a lot of our events. But it's really important on our legals that we really have expedited service on the billings too.
Sure.
One instant Commissioner Richards was talking about was for a public sale. The then person that was in the office didn't reach out to me, reached out to Cheyenne, and there was miscommunication. I could have run to Staples and got those inserts run and inserted, we would have inserted in the paper, but that was circumvented. And I made that clear to Sally that we could have accommodated that. And they had to make an emergency. And I'm glad Green River could do it for you, but we could have done it too. Had I been contacted, it went to Cheyenne and the email and the communication circumvented us being able to service that. And the issues of the billing were, we give those freebies to non-county agencies, and sometimes it wasn't clear on our end what account should be billed for this particular ad. But we've got that cleared up now, and we've kind of got a streamlined way of handling that. And thanks to Clerk Lane and helping us understand that, where things go and how the traffic should move. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? I appreciate both options. You can see it in the proposals. There's difficulty. I know I've had conversations with, both on, not having enough staff to cover each and every meeting or even attend meetings. I know the Rocket's here quite frequently and appreciate a lot of the articles produced from Trina and the other members there. And, I read the same ones from Han, and I think it's in the proposal there that it's a two-man crew from the Star. And so together making that coverage has been a challenge. It's been a challenge for us because of what we just mentioned with getting the agenda set, not having any flexibility there. I think they're both good services. People still do read the paper, and I don't think we can really go wrong with either one. So I guess with that, if there's no other discussion, we do have a motion and a second on the table to designate the Green River Star for the newspaper of record for 2024. I would ask if there's any other discussion. If not, all those in favor of the Green River Star signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous. Thank you both for coming over and preparing a proposal for us, and looks like we'll continue on with the Green River Star. Next, under tab D is the conflict of interest disclosures. It's that first of the year fun. Turn it over to Clerk Lane.
Good morning again, Chairman, Commissioners. It's my day to get up here, I guess. Pursuant to Wyoming State Statute 6-5-118, a conflict of interest disclosure must be made by the Board of County Commissioners of Sweetwater County to declare that they currently have personal interest in whatever banking institutions that you belong to, loans and investment accounts. And so what we need to have on record is for you to go down the line, however you want to do that, to make your statement of what your banking institutions are for public record.
Thank you, Cindy. Island, you want to start us off? We'll just go down the line.
To whom it may concern pursuant to WS 65118, conflict of interest disclosure, I, Island Richards, Board of County Commissioners of Sweetwater County, Wyoming, declare that I currently have a personal interest, example, savings, checking, and loan or investment accounts in the following institutions in which Sweetwater County has invested or may invest public funds in the future: RSNB Bank, PNC Bank, Commerce Bank, Wells Fargo, US Bank, Chase Bank. Sincerely, Island Richards.
Need some additional time, Commissioner Tillman?
I just thought of another one. Pursuant to Wyoming Statute 6-5-118, conflict of interest disclosure, I, Mary E. Tolman, Board of County Commissioner of Sweetwater County, Wyoming, declare that I currently have a personal interest, in other words, savings, checkings, and loan or investment accounts in the following institutions in which Sweetwater County has invested or may invest public funds in the future: First Bank of Wyoming, BMO, Bank of Montreal, formerly Bank of the West, Toronto Valley Federal Credit Union, Wells Fargo Bank. Thank you.
Do we have to repeat that every time, or can we just
No.
state who we bank with?
I think you can state where I would say the I in your name. And who you
Sure.
bank.
I, Keaton West, have savings, checking, loan or investment accounts through Commerce Bank of Wyoming, Toronto Valley Federal Credit Union, Utah Power Credit Union, and Waihi Federal Credit Union.
I, Taylor Jones, have savings, checking, and or loan investment accounts with RSNB Bank, Toronto Valley Federal Credit Union, Meridian Trust, First Bank, Commerce Bank.
I, Robert D. Slaughter, have funds invested or accounts with BOM or BMO, Bank of Montreal, whichever it may be, Wells Fargo Bank, Toronto Valley Credit Union. Sincerely, Robert D. Slaughter.
Okay. Thank you. I will collect those, of course, and record them and keep them on file.
Thanks, Cindy. Appreciate it. Next is item number 4, the Sweetwater Fair Board bylaws. And with us today is Candy Pendleton, Sweetwater County Events Complex Executive Director, and welcome back.
Thank you. You had in your packet, and I have a copy in front of me if you have any question, the new bylaws that were adopted by the Sweetwater County Fair Board at our December meeting. We brought these to our board in October and November and finalized them in December. They really are very basic bylaws that spell out who can be a member of the board, what you have to do to be a qualifier, and how you have to attend the meetings, when the meetings are, and my role as a director. So pretty basic bylaws. They have been approved by our board unanimously, and now they need to come to you for approval and signature by Chairman West and County Clerk.
Thanks, Candy. We appreciate you keeping us in the loop on these. Any questions for the Fair Board's bylaws?
I do have a question. Are these new bylaws or just updates, or what changes have been made, or
Good question.
what is the status?
We were unable to find the original bylaws for the Fair Board. We looked in our information. We checked with the county here when unable to locate anything. So figured the easiest thing to do was to write a new set of bylaws. So I assume it's probably very close to what we had before, Commissioner Tolman, but I cannot find those original documents.
It's amazing how they disappear.
Yeah. It was 70 plus years ago. So those paper copies, I think, were problematic.
Any other questions or feedback for Candy, commissioners?
Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
I move to approve the Fair Board bylaws as presented and approve the chairman and the county clerk to sign.
You have a motion to approve by Commissioner Richards. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. Motion's unanimous.
I have the original here. Do you want that? Sally, Clerk Lane?
Probably Sally.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Candy. Commissioners, next up on the agenda is a break. We are 35 minutes ahead of schedule.
That's why you're still chairman.
So let's plan on, let's do a 15-minute break. We'll try and see if Eric is ready to go ahead of that, and we'll plan on coming back at 10:20. If he needs longer, then we'll take longer, but we'll try for 10:20. Take a quick break. Call this meeting back to order. Sorry about the delay there. We're a little ahead of schedule, so we're waiting for some additional staff to attend. So where we left off under tab D was item number 6, the review of the Sweetwater County comments on the draft Rock Springs Resource Management Plan, the RMP. We've got Land Use Director Eric Bingham with us this morning, as well as Danielle Betancourt. And good morning to you both.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Thank you for your time today. We are finally narrowing down the process here and getting towards the end. And we're not done yet, but we at least want to provide a draft to you so that you knew kind of where we were at with things, where we're at with the comments, and how things are formulated right now. So I've got Danielle Betancourt also on Zoom to add additional comments. What I want to refer to first is what you have in hand is a chart and then also a letter. Where I want to refer to first is the chart, because that's where the meat and potatoes of all the comments are coming from that go into the letter. And the letter and the chart will be a part of the comments. Keep in mind that also we still don't have the consistency review from the Wyoming Commissioners Association, so that will be added into these comments. And that will be going through every single management action, taking our federal lands and resource plan and comparing it to the resource management plans. So that's still awaiting. That's going to be probably a substantially large document. And then also, in addition, there was a chart that was submitted by the Coalition of Local Governments that has all the reviews on the ACECs that we were also wanting to include. So there's a lot of attachments that will be included. We're probably looking around 100 pages when this thing is done, maybe even more. I don't know. We'll have to see when things come in from the Wyoming Commissioners Association. Any questions on that?
Yeah,
Mr.
I
Chairman?
have a question.
Sure.
Danielle, the consistency review comments, they may not get them till after the January 17th, because then they have the 60-day consistency review period. So you may not get them in time to submit them, right, Danielle?
Hi, Mary. No, I think what they were saying is they were trying to get that done before the comment deadline. So they wanted to submit that before the consistency review period.
Okay. All right. Good.
Yeah. I think when I got a hold of Micah Christensen in December, he did state that they were just trying to finalize things. So we should be seeing those in the next, I would hope so, in the next week or so to attach. So any more questions on that, Mr. Chairman? Okay.
I think so.
Okay, so if you direct yourself to the actual chart, the comments, how this is set up in our comments, and the reason for this is when Bureau of Land Management and just the federal government, when they review comments, this is kind of the outline of things during the protest period and also when you get into potential litigation down the road. And you have to answer the questions are, first of all, what's the primary issue you're talking about? What's the management action directed to a management action that's in the resource management plan? The regulation, code, the policy violated, the harm, the environmental impact, and then any attachments that you have, and then propose a solution or recommendation to them. So that could be your comment as to, let's say there's a certain part, an ACEC or a special resource management area, something in there that you completely agree with, and you say, we wouldn't like that as an ACEC, but we would like to see that as a special recreation management area. So that way you're being proactive, you're giving them positive comments as far as what you would like to see in there, but that also that there are certain things in this document and policies and procedures that have not been followed. So that's the reasoning for the way this chart has been set up. So we hit some of the strong points of the document that direct how things go as far as when oil and gas gets shut down in certain areas, leasing areas get closed, they all start with your areas of environmental concern. And I apologize, I'm losing my voice. So when you look at the first primary issue, that's what we looked at was ACECs, because that's what's going to direct your visual resource management and then all these other maps that are included in the resource management plan. So I'm just going to go through these briefly. If there's any concern, and I'll stop at each section as we go through them, if there's any questions or comments. My goal is obviously at the next meeting that we finalize things. Of course, this is a draft form, but then we can get this into a final form in the next couple of weeks. So first of all, and we've written letters on this already to the Bureau of Land Management, is they fail to comply with the regulations as far as the notification requirements and the advertising. When you look at other resource management plans, which we have, we've looked at some, the Gran Escalante, take for instance, certain RMPs that have been done, the Rollins Resource Management Plan that was recently done. You know, they list, the public needs to know what resource use limitations are going to happen in those areas in the notification. You know, it's no different than when we do a zoning, we state, okay, this is what's going to be affected by whatever application it is. Same thing with theirs. So when we're proposing these areas, those resource use limitations are supposed to be included. They were not. It just stated the locations and the acreages, and none of the resource use limitations were included. Great day for this to happen, the voice.
We only have 36 more pages, so.
Yeah, no problem, right?
Here.
Oh, thanks, Mary. Should have brought some cough drops. Okay, so we specify the regulation. The harm is failure to follow the proper process. And then what we would like to see is renoticing the proposed ACECs. They also failed when there's areas that are to be considered. You know, there's been comments of so many ACECs and that were actually proposed. They're supposed to state in there, you know, as far as I heard in the numbers of over 27 that were proposed, they're supposed to be listed in there and why they didn't meet the ACEC designations. That was not included in the document. So what we're asking there is to renotice those proposed ACECs. And this is a big one. And I can probably have Danielle elaborate a little bit more on this. She has a lot of experience with ACECs. But this was a big comment that came from the Coalition of Local Governments, was their failure to show the importance and significance qualities. You know, there's a two-prong approach that they do with these environmental concern areas of environmental concern. And the big issue is that they have to meet that two-prong. And when you go in through that, there were areas, and they're further in the comments here, where they were evaluated as just other management areas where they didn't meet ACEC designation, where they are now ACECs. Well, there's no explanation as to why they are. And that's a big concern. You know, an alternative B does that. You know, and the other alternatives don't do that. So there's a huge concern with that. Take Pine Mountain, Sugarloaf Basin. Those were just regular management areas. Well, now they've gone from that to it's all an ACEC now. And there are probably pockets maybe within those areas in Sugarloaf Basin that could be protected, but they don't need an ACEC designation to do that. The other thing is there's other laws and regulations that protect areas with paleontology, you know, that have those types of resources that are there that can be protected by laws. The National Historic Preservation Act. Those are some other things that can protect those areas. So in this one, and Danielle, maybe you want to jump in here on ACECs on specifically on those not meeting those important and significant qualities, and just kind of your perspective on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you explained it pretty well in terms of the relevance importance. I think that's been a big discussion and debate throughout, is whether they provided enough information as to may hit the relevance portion of the analysis, but maybe not the importance, whether it's more than locally significant or if it has some type of national significance, was one of the big past comments and discussion areas. And then we always say there's the third prong, and that even if you meet relevance and importance, the other issue is whether you actually need special management in order to protect or prevent irreparable damage to that resource. And so a lot of the big discussion is the fact that, okay, you don't actually need the ACEC designation. It's already being protected, and kind of what Eric said, it's already being protected under other statutes or regulations, or even being protected under existing designations like WSAs, or wilderness study areas, or even like the special recreation management areas, or in the past plan, what's in place right now is just a management area that had specific management actions to protect certain resources that they were concerned about.
Any questions, Mr. Chairman, on that?
Yeah, and I think that's not a question, but a lot of the difficulty is because of the different layers. You know, and there's a layer on top of layer, whether it's an ACEC or an ACEC on top of the WSA or a management action underneath. I mean, it just seems like there's a lot of duplicate designations. In the event that one is removed, you have another one backing that up, kind of thing. So I think you guys have done a great job on trying to dive through those and emphasize why they may not be necessary. Any questions on the ACEC's, commissioners? Okay.
So I'm on page 2, Mr. Chairman, of the chart. And in there, you know, it states all the USC violations, including the sections of the resource management plan. What I put in here, what we put in here is, as far as a solution, potentially likely support alternative C, no ACECs. What that does is, in our last discussion, the commissioners had stated at least restrictive. So, you know, the special recreation management areas provide that. The other solutions that could be in here, but willing to consider alternative D. Take, for instance, the Little Mountain, the Jack Morrow Hills area. You know, in there, I don't think we're nailing ourselves down to an opinion. But what we would like to see is maybe their further discussion, you know, after this thing, and they accept the public comments, potential meetings in the future that we could sit down and go over and have those discussions. Any concerns on that, Mr. Chairman?
That's called adaptive management after they sign the RMP.
Is it? Okay.
Right,
Okay.
Danielle?
Yes. Although I think maybe too, Eric was hinting at that we would see more and things done before the FEIS.
Correct.
Good luck on that one.
Doesn't hurt to ask or try, right? Okay, so we'll move on from that. And just further down in that chart on page 3, it just goes into further areas, just like I was stating, that just don't meet those relevance and importance areas, the maps and such, because those affect the fluid mineral leasing areas, the management of those other areas that I was talking about, the archaeological. I kind of just summarized that already on pages 3 and 4. That's what those do. They're referring to the maps. We're asking them to potentially reevaluate the ACECs, explain, you know, do a further analysis on that. John, is there anything you wanted to add to that section?
I would just add the argument includes that the ACECs will not be a substitute for wilderness study. I think when Eric's talking about the relevance importance, that can be viewed, you know, BLM can argue that, hey, we get to weigh those factors. It's something that can be weighed, and we ultimately get to choose that. Yeah. So it can feel discretionary in nature. I think Eric and Danielle went further into that to take it out of the discretionary area by identifying that there are the same resources were not determined to be need an ACEC in locations right next to us, to demonstrate that this isn't purely a discretionary component of the ACEC argument. And then as you get to the next part of that, Like I said, it's being used as a substitute for wilderness study. And they would say, well, you can still have two, you can have a wilderness study designation and an ACEC designation. That is something that's allowable. However, you're supposed to explain why in the draft EIS. So it's not enough to just to identify that, yes, you can theoretically have two designations. You're supposed to provide that explanation. And the truth of the matter, as has been explained multiple times by BLM, is that it was used in case the wilderness study designation was released at some point in time. So each of these arguments has a, as Eric's going through them, has black and white components. It has some discretionary components that I think Eric and Danielle have done a great job at being able to explain why it shouldn't escape the discretionary review, because it's really there's I guess data that supports that it doesn't fit within the discretionary decision making that they say it does. So I just wanted to add the wilderness study component.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Daly, on that. That was a great point. And that came up in our task force meeting too. You know, that whole discussion of those overlays of ACECs on top of wilderness study areas. And it states very clearly in manuals and CFR regulations and such that you cannot substitute ACEC for wilderness study area designations. So that's also included in these comments too. So, okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Tillman.
I would just state in the cooperative meetings, we were told that they had to make sure that they were protected in case they were withdrawn. And we didn't read the fine print good enough, I guess, to know that.
I don't think there was fine print.
It's okay. So, and then in addition, you know, we put some comments in there as far as possible potential things for them to look at as supporting alternative A as far as fluid mineral leasing. That's more in line. You know, that's the other thing when you're looking at these ACECs, so let's say you did pass those through and you see those visual resource areas expanding out, and we'll get into that in the next section here. They expand outside of the ACECs and the fluid mineral leasing closing areas. You know, you'll see those in ACECs, but they're being expanded outside of that, which is an issue. So, not any questions, Mr. Chairman. I'll move on from that.
Continued education, it seems.
It is, right? Okay, visual resource management. Yeah, this is another important component.
What page are you?
So go to page 11 of the chart.
Thank you.
You bet. So in there, we're explicitly going through and identifying those management actions that we're commenting on. But one huge issue as you go through all the different alternatives on the visual resource management is, and this is as the chairman was stating, these layers that get placed on everything. So if you just only comment on one section of the code, you got to be careful and comment on other sections of not code, but their resource management plan, because they all have effects on it. Visual resource management has effects on development. Class 1, wilderness areas, very restrictive, very difficult to develop anything. They're being managed as wilderness areas. 2, very restrictive. Typically your ACECs make it very difficult, have to be hidden. Class 3s, you start opening up things for development. They have to meet BLM colors, things and such. Class 4, it's your Walmart parking lot, just wide open. So when you're looking at those maps, that's what 1 and 2s do. They can restrict development. There have been comments I've heard from the Bureau of Land Management. You can build in a class 2. Yes, but it's going to be very restrictive to do that. So that's one thing, and very difficult, especially you get an oil and gas, something that's very tall. renewable energy, any of those things are going to be very difficult to construct in that. One thing they've done in alternative B is it way expanded those class 2 areas. So even though they've proposed this large area of ACECs, they've expanded out the visual resource management beyond that to protect all these view sheds, which restricts oil and gas, mining, all those things, potentially outdoor recreation, all those things. So those are some things that's why it's so important to also comment on the visual resource management. And that's what we've done here.
Well, Eric, you might talk about even like the Oregon Trail, you know how flat the desert is.
Yes.
If you say you can't do anything in view of the Oregon Trail, I mean, that could be 50 or 100 miles.
Yes, right, exactly. And so, in the alternative B, on the visual resource management, they want to protect 5 miles on both sides of that trail. And so that puts a lot of area restricted on development. Now, just to add to that, one thing that we're asking for, and that's pretty much, I'm going to just generalize the comments in here and then turn it over to Danielle if she wants to add anything else. But the problem is you need to look at the resource use allocations that are underneath. And what does that mean? Are you looking, is there an oil and gas well there? Are you looking at there's trails? Are you looking at are there oil and gas tanks there? Those are things you need to look at and evaluate when you're looking at a view shed. It makes sense, right? If you're going to protect a view shed in a pristine area, those are some things that you have to look at as the existing development that's out there. So.
Lost.
Okay.
It said something about HDMI.
I lost here. Okay. As for break, Mr. Chairman.
I assume, Danielle, can you still hear us?
Sorry, you guys cut out. I could just hear you when you asked me.
We're having some IT issues here, so we're going to take a quick break and see if we can get this turned back around. We lost our visuals.
It was a medical break with a rotator cuff. Danielle, my apologies for not forwarding your bill to the county. I thought it went through, and then I realized when I checked that it hadn't. So, and we have not heard a word from Nolan Rapp on FNRPA. Now I put in calls to him, and so I called him out in the public comment period, or my comment period today.
Okay, thanks, Mary Ann. No problem.
And also I got the packet of material and the letters sent from CLG to our neighboring counties. I mentioned that in my report today. So thank you very much for your help on that.
Absolutely.
So we can still talk even though we can't see anything,
That
right?
concludes Commissioner Tillman's report.
I can hear you guys now better.
Danielle, can you see us?
Yes, I can now. I
Okay.
can, it's a camera's on you, on Eric.
And just so the public knows, Danielle has been writing comments faithfully for at least 12 years that I know of for all of the federal plans and projects in Southwest Wyoming for the coalition.
Thanks.
All right, I think we're back.
Okay.
We still recording, Cindy?
Okay.
All right, we're good.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I don't know where we left off, but basically on visual resource management, they have to look at those resource use allocations when they're establishing these areas. That's the big issue. We don't feel they've done that because there's areas that are class 2 that there's development. The other thing is they're expanding these areas way outside of areas that they have stated that they would like to see protected. So those are the major issues with that. We're asking for a reevaluation of that. That was a big issue with the Rollins Resource Management Plan, and during the protest of that was that issue where the Coalition of Local Governments was successful. Anything you want to add on that, Danielle, on visual resource management?
No, I think you covered it pretty well. You know, the biggest thing is they need to consider the resource allocation decisions made in the previous RMPs, as well as whatever they're making in the existing RMPs. So we're trying to also kind of compare and compare the maps and everything else to determine if there's also any conflicts between what's being allowed in the existing versus or this proposed RMP versus what's being proposed for VRM class 2. So
Any questions on that, Mr. Chairman?
No, and that buffer you referred to, that was a 5 mile proposed, but it's quarter mile now, correct?
One of the areas is, I believe it still proposes a 5-mile
Yeah.
buffer on there. Oh, an alternative B. Yeah. So when you see that, it might be an alternative D also. C does not have that, but when you look at that corridor, that's very wide, that's on alternative D when you look on that map.
And they couldn't include the whole trail, last I knew. They could only, if they had development in it, the quarter, then they could not include that in the class 2. Is that what you understand?
Yeah.
So the trail is really segmented.
And then parts of the trail are also difficult to even see at this point. So. Any questions on visual resource management, Mr. Chairman? If not, we'll go to page 17.
I think we're good.
Okay, so this one is pretty straightforward. It's the consistency with local plans. Kind of go through that rather quickly because we don't have that before us. But the one issue, the biggest issue with that, which is what we have brought up in our comments already to Tracy Stone Manning, is that if you go through the resource management plan, they did not review our federal lands and resource plan. It's not in the chart. They're supposed to do a consistency review. They're supposed to explain why in certain areas, let's say they can't be consistent. Well, they're supposed to explain why they weren't consistent. So none of that is in the document. None of that is in the draft resource management plan. And the county has submitted that, our final lands and resource plan in 2022 when we approved it. And then there's been no response. I mean, we sent it to them and then they acknowledged, but there's no notice of that in the resource management plan. So that's really the issue there, Mr. Chairman.
Aaron Bud Phelan out of Cheyenne is the one that's been hired by the governor to do the consistency review on the plan.
Oh, okay. Okay, good to know. And then just to add, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Toman, during the consistency review, this will also be a part of that too. So we'll have a 2-shot at that also. Well, the governor will. If not, Mr. Chairman, I would go to page 23, and this is the big one. And I think this is probably one of our stronger points that we're making to the Bureau of Land Management is the failure to coordinate with cooperating agencies in changing the preferred alternative from D as in dog to B as in boy. That's the crux of the biggest issue, that when you go through the NEPA process, is there's supposed to be meaningful participation. And that goes from start to finish, until it gets to release to the public draft. And we had received no communication since 2019. And the county had not, and that I can find. And that whole lack of time and then switching from what was told, it was the alternative D, through the cooperator process and then changing it without involving the cooperators is not in concert and not in harmony with the way the NEPA process is supposed to, or FLPBA or any of that process is supposed to be handled. And that has been our biggest, when you're told, okay, this is what we're working on as an alternative D, this is what we're supposed to be formulating, that's where your comments go towards, and that's what you're being told. And so that I would say is one of our stronger arguments when you go through this, because it's repeated through the NEPA handbook, meaningful participation. And where did that meaningful participation happen? When you switched alternatives. It didn't happen. And so, any questions on that, Mr. Chairman? Anything you want to add, Dan?
Just state, the day that it was announced that alternative B was going to be the preferred alternative, that was the day that Kimberly was meeting with the cooperators for the first time in a year and a half or whatever. But she did say at the end of that meeting, cooperators, harness your powers. You have legal jurisdiction over any other comments. So just
Yep.
FYI.
Any questions on that, Mr. Chairman?
No, I mean, I've read through what you guys have prepared there and I agree with, that's a big one. I mean, that's part of why you're a part of the cooperator status, you know, so you can have influence. I made a comment at our task force meeting that feels like that's what the task force has been created for, you know, to
Right.
provide comments back and
Right.
find ways to find some common ground, you know, with the BLM. Well, that's this. That's the purpose
Right,
and the importance of this. And so, no, I think job well done.
Okay.
Any other feedback, commissioners?
Tremendously helpful work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Jones. The next section is transportation and travel. And quite a few comments in there. The big, and Commissioner Jones, you've been pretty passionate about a lot of these issues that are in this document concerning the transportation and travel, and there's a lot of issues with it. And, you know, that we've heard promises that things will get pulled out, but I think the important thing is here, you still need to make a comment on the fact that it's still in there, it's in a draft form, and that if you are going to remove it, let's make a comment and tell them they need to remove it. So, as you know, the Transportation Travel Management Plan is incomplete when you look at it. There's no maps in there. There's no range of alternatives in there. So when you look at those maps, there's supposed to be a range, as you can see on some other management actions, there is. ACEC's big range there. On the OHV stuff and the travel and transportation, they all look the same. And so you're supposed to still provide a range in that. We'll be making that comment. There's issues with the amount of roads, 12,831 open, 225, 537 acres closed, and 3,367,576 acres limited designated roads and trails. That's when you're making those statements and then there's no maps involved. Well, how makes it very difficult comment for the public, makes it very difficult for them to, well, how am I supposed to make a comment on a closed road when I don't see a map associated with that? So that's incomplete. So there are certain things with the travel and transportation that they're supposed to provide that were not provided. They're supposed to at least, you know, on all these linear disturbances and such that are throughout this. Our thing is to submit a supplemental DEIS to address the range of alternatives. They can do that. Remove all the information associated with the travel and transportation, like you say you're going to, so that it can be addressed at a later date. And that's what a supplemental means. Let's address it at a later date. And they can do that. They're doing that with the sage grouse, as Commissioner Tillman stated in her comments today. They can address it later on. They can do the same thing with this, but allow meaningful participation to do that with the cooperators so that you come up with a plan that everybody is working on together.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Tillman.
I just have to state again, they spent $8.9 million developing this plan. They had private contractors helping write the plan. And so I blame them for a lot of the errors, because they should have done a better job of making sure that they vetted out the alternative B and some of those other issues that are in this plan, and including things like transportation that don't belong there. They were hired as the experts to help, and I'm not giving the BLM an out, but it makes me very upset. They were paid over $1 million a year to help facilitate this draft. And you end up with a mess like this. Sorry,
And we did obviously discuss this one pretty heavily in the task force and asked that, you know, they've made multiple comments about redlining it in the final EIS, but, you know, I think there's a lot of hesitation on whether or not that's valid. And given the lack of cooperator, you know, participation. And so, you know, can you send a letter identifying that or something? And they will not. And so that's why I think Eric and the team have decided to provide comments just in case, even though it doesn't follow, you know, what their own process is with the maps and things of that nature. It's still in there. So,
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Jones.
just a couple of comments on this. excuse me, I appreciate everything you all put together, but in this OHV portion in particular, and I've said this before and I'll say it again because I think it's very important people understand this. The BLM continues to say they have not done travel management. It's very disingenuous to say that because two of the key elements of doing travel management is one, you have to do an inventory of your roads, and two, you have to detail what you're going to do with each mile of road that you've inventoried, which they've done that. Each of the four alternatives has different information for what will happen with each mile of road. So to say that they haven't done travel management just simply is not true. It might not be published, but it's done, and they may revise it. Who knows what we're going to end up with? But to say it's not done is not accurate. And one of the things that I really appreciate you all put in here was under management action 6607, closing roughly 3.4 million acres of roads without a travel management plan. Acres means nothing. You don't ride a side-by-side, a Jeep, a pickup, a motorcycle, whatever it is, based on the acre. You ride it based on the mile. So to discuss acreage is just not relevant, really, in real life. I will also say that I made it a point to ask Ms. Foster, I believe 3 times in our RMP meetings, the difference between designated and existing roads, and she said there is no difference. So that is very, very important to keep in mind going forward. We were told different things at the BLM meeting. A designated road would be one that had a blade on it or what have you, but she was very clear in our meetings that designated is the same as existing. So if you go by that, then you go off of the county map, which has somewhere in the neighborhood of 33,000 miles of roads and trails. And then, of course, you can use satellite imagery. When you then look at the language you put in here where there will be 2,300 whatever open, we go from 33,000 and change to 2,352 open. So there's some huge discrepancies in there.
Mr. Chairman, just for the record again, cooperators did participate in zone area travel management planning. So we did do that. We went zone by zone with the ID team from the BLM and talked about every road. And they said, well, if this is a duplication, is it okay if we take it off? And so basically we stated, as Wally always said, we want all roads to remain unless they're like a seismograph road and they parallel each other.
Yeah.
But we went through the whole BLM, and then the conservation district on the outside went had private meeting or public meetings on each of those areas and asked the public to identify roads that weren't on any of the maps. And Kent Felderman did find on the BLM website that huge map that Gene printed that had all the roads. Then it was removed from the website. It was a BLM map with every road, trail, and trace on it. And we started with that in identifying the roads. So the travel management, like you said, Commissioner Jones, it's basically, I'm sure it's been done. We've had the meetings, they've identified them and met with the cooperators and.
Well, Mr. Chairman, the thing about that map, and probably part of the reason that, a lot of the reason I've been so passionate about this is that map details every road that everybody in Sweetwater County uses. And it doesn't matter if you're in agriculture, if you're in oil and gas, if you're in Trona, if you're a recreationalist, a hunter, a fisherman, camping, it doesn't really matter what it is. You use all those roads and trails. So that's why it's so concerning to know that there's in excess of 33,000 miles of them out there. And then the BLM starts in their language discussing about 16,000. So somehow, poof, we've magically lost half. And then we're going to negotiate down from there. So it's just, it hammers pretty much everybody who exists in Sweetwater County and any tourism we might hope to get someday.
Well, I believe it was mentioned too when we were discussing this, that the transportation and travel plan would be next within 3 to 5 years after the final RMP. So that's what's kind of odd with, errors like this. Well, that shouldn't have been in there. And so we'll just throw that into another supplemental plan. I mean, you've got sage grouse, wild horses, travel management, solar. I mean, it just seems like there's always another finger of something that you have to try and dissect. And it's a pretty frustrating process, which again goes back to the importance of, working well with your cooperators.
Correct. Correct.
Sorry
Just
to
an
get off.
FYI, the other RMPs, the Kimmer, they started their travel management. They've only done one little area in the Cumberland allotment area. Pinedale, they did the Boulder landscape. That's all the transportation they've gotten done. Rollins, I don't know that they've done any. And those RMPs have been done for more than 5 years.
Did we cover travel and
I think we're good.
transportation?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think it's good comments.
Absolutely. And I'm glad actually Commissioner Jones stated this, that travel management's more than, we talk about OHV and stuff, but the industry is huge.
Oh, yeah.
How are you going to get to your oil well? How are you going to get out to whatever it may be, your house? Because there's people who actually live out there in some of these areas. So yeah, good point. Okay, well, let's move on to page 30, right-of-way avoidance. So with that alternative B and including D, have some issues with it when you get into the right-of-way exclusion areas. In particular, the effect they're going to have on future industrial projects. 2 of them that are in the NEPA process right now, Trona Mine projects. So that's going to have a huge effect. The other thing that it affects is the potential of any solar or renewables or anything that under this administration, they have executive orders out on promoting renewable energy, but then they put in all these right-of-way exclusion areas where you can't develop those types of projects. So
Eric, can I interrupt you though? Danielle, can you comment on CLG's comments on the Federal Register notice to allow right-of-ways for solar and wind last July? How does that fit into this RMP?
Yes, and I think that fits in a lot. So it's going to be whether that is consistent or inconsistent with what's being proposed in alternative B right now versus what's being proposed in the Western Solar Plan revision RMP. So I think, I've heard that it potentially is supposed to be consistent and there isn't going to be any issues, but I think there may potentially be some issues, and it depends on which alternative they ultimately pick on either one. So I think that's one of the big issues. And I know other industries, such as, and utilities, even PacifiCorp, Rocky Mountain Power, are really concerned about this, and specifically to the projects they have planned, the transmission lines they have planned, and the like, and how it's going to conflict with some of those that they have in the works.
But how can a Federal Register notice right in the middle of an RMP, which is going to take precedent, that Federal Register notice the saying wind and solar is okay, or this RMP? Is that how they're backdooring their problem, their dilemma? No right-of-ways?
Yeah, I mean, it's unclear, right? I don't know. They're going to have to deal with it eventually, whichever one gets done first, or, whether one's going to amend the other.
Oh, more exciting work for you.
So, Mr. Chairman, a lot of the issue with these, obviously exclusion areas shut down, the potential of expanding infrastructure, roads, travel and transportations could become an issue on future roads and utilities. But they've also, you'll see these in ACECs, but the same thing, they've expanded these areas outside of those areas. And they've placed these exclusion areas, if you look at alternative B, in checkerboard in areas, and one of the huge issues is the issue of private property rights. And especially in the checkerboard, we're a unique area in Sweetwater County that we have the checkerboard, that runs 20 miles roughly north and south. I think it's even further than that, of checkerboard area between federal and private sections. And you have exclusion areas in there, you're preventing people from potentially developing their property, gets into grazing rights, whole slew of things. I mean, alternative C is probably the best because it removes any of those exclusion areas from checkerboard, but the other ones have issues with it. B is just way above and beyond that, and that's pretty much what we're pointing out in this area. Mr. Chairman, any questions on that?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards.
Eric, do you have any comments in here about the right-of-way exclusions within the Sweetwater County Growth Management area? Because there are right-of-way exclusions, but in the checkerboard's bad enough, but all the way right to the edge of Rock Springs and within the areas that we plan for growth.
So the one comment I have, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Richards, that I do have related to that, I haven't specified specifically, and we can, that's no problem with that. One thing is, I'm glad you brought that up, is that industrial park that we proposed is in a right-of-way exclusion area. So all that money that we spent on a plan for an industrial park out by the airport may not be specifically in the section we're looking at, but how do you get infrastructure to it? Well, it's going through areas of right-of-way exclusion areas. So we're going to provide maps of the industrial project that we have. But yeah, I think it's a good point in that if there's, just take for instance, Simplot, let's say if they need to run a new water line out there and it needs to go in a different area than the existing one, that could affect them long-term. So to answer your question, parts of it, but we can specify that out.
And I guess that goes with going back to the visual resources. I believe they have some class twos listed within the growth management area right up to the borders of Rock Springs, and that doesn't make sense. If you want orderly development, you have to allow for it and plan for it, and this just shuts down orderly development.
It does, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Richards. That's what we're stating in there on those class twos, because in the growth management area, I don't believe there are any ACECs proposed. Why are those class twos in there? Now, I know we've restricted renewables to be outside of the growth management area, and that is actually in alternative D and B. But yeah, so yes, point well taken. Yes, those will be included. Mr. Chairman, any other questions on that?
And some of that's probably in our plan, which is part of that consistency review, I would assume, the growth management area.
There are some, I believe there's some points in there, yes.
It'll be pretty easy to do the consistency review. There is no consistency.
Point taken, Commissioner Tobin. Danielle, did you want to add anything on right-of-way exclusions?
No, I think you hit most of the main parts of it. And, you know, the big issue, and I think what we've talked about in the past too, is the checkerboard and the impact it has on private landowners and the potential of taking a private property or the right to develop for private landowners.
So, Mr. Chairman, that takes us to our last page. This is just something that was added in, that I added in. Might not be the strongest argument, but it's just kind of some of the theme that goes throughout the document. And I know it's been brought up is, you know, when you get into these, and probably what needs, and if it's not in here, I need to make sure that it is in here, is when you get into arbitrary numbers of distances of a quarter mile versus 5 miles. And the same thing goes for on the raptor nesting. And when you get into historical nesting versus the occupied nesting. And there's been a lot, I don't think anybody in any of the meetings that we've had, whether they're task force meetings, has really got a good understanding of why and how are you going to define what historical raptor nest. And the reasoning for it is because of the concerns of shutting down of roads, development and such. This will have an effect on development. And so I did throw this in there to pull that point out. Not a discussion really that I've had with John or Danielle, but it's more of that. I know I've had commissioners talk about it. It's been brought up at meetings. Where is the science behind some of these buffers that are being produced on the nesting? Of course, we want to protect raptor nesting, but I still don't have a clear definition of what's coming from the Bureau of Land Management. What is a historical nest? I'm just not getting a clear, concise answer on that. I think more is the question out there, where's the scientific evidence on why we need to protect these? If the historical nest, if it's not there, but it was said it was there and there's no evidence of that, is that a historical raptor nest? So there's just a lot of confusion and clarification, just at least to bring that up. Any questions, Mr. Chairman, on that? This is something I did put in here. I haven't had a lot of discussion with John or Danielle about it, but I put it in there because it's been discussed.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Tillman.
In the cooperator meetings, the word potential habitat was used in all of those species. And I don't know how much they have potential right now, but right now, the way that's written, there would be no grazing till July 31st if it's in a potential or historic raptor area, and they're including ravens, which are not raptors.
Yes, they are.
They are?
I
was told
believe
they
so.
are not.
I believe raptors were included in that.
Yeah,
Correct.
in this RMP.
In
But
the
the
RMP, yes.
definition of the Migratory Bird Act, I don't know, Danielle, are ravens considered a raptor?
I'd have to double check that, but I'm not entirely
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, I'm not sure either. But it would stop grazing. If you couldn't turn out till July 31st, there's nowhere you could go.
Yeah, huge effect on grazing, yes.
Any other comments, commissioners?
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Jones.
appreciate you putting that last section in there because I think that raptor language is very vague in general and it is very concerning. And in our last in-person meeting, it was brought up and we tried to get a real definition and it started out being pretty solid. Basically, if there was a nest there last year, then it's historic until it's not used anymore. But then the conversation really veered off into a gray area. And I don't really know. We didn't really end up with anything of any substance, shockingly enough. But so I appreciate you putting that in there. I think it's very important.
Mr. Chairman, John, Danielle, is there anything you want to add? This comes to the end and we have the narrative section. Anything you guys want to add? I'll turn to Danielle first, but Danielle, is there anything that you'd like comment on that I didn't cover?
I think you covered everything and gave a good summary of where the comments are going and the direction. And, just to add, I know that, like Eric was saying before, there'll be certain attachments that will be included that show kind of some of the errors they're making, as well as to how other plans have done a better job during the EIS process. I think the only other thing I wanted to point out was the consistency review, and I know a lot of times it gets pushed off until after the FEIS, and their ability to do that later. However, it ignores, at least the BLM, in fact, is ignoring what is required under NEPA, which requires that consistency discussion within the EIS itself. And it's not something that can be put off and done after the EIS has already been completed. So I think that's a big push and a big error on their part. We all recognize that occurs later also, but it has to be in the EIS itself.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle. Great comments. John, anything you want to add?
I think that the letter starts to articulate each of these in paragraph form as well. And so I would just sort of take off of what Danielle said, which is that each specific area contains individual violations specific to that area as well.
Thanks, John. Any other questions, Mr. Chairman? No, go ahead.
I don't have any questions, commissioners. I've read the letter. I read, your comments you guys have prepared. Obviously there's some more to come with that. Grammatically, there's a couple here and there, but I realize it's rough draft form. So I think it reads really well. I think you've managed to define kind of the positions that we've taken up here in response to this. It's been a task, and I can't imagine the time and effort you all have put into it. Just being on a task force has made me have a larger receding hairline than I care for, but it's a lot, and that's pretty remarkable that you've been able to come up with what you have and, do so strategically, and hopefully it carries the weight that we all think it will. So I appreciate everyone's efforts on that. Commissioner Jones?
Chairman, if I could, I'd like to thank all three of you for all your time and efforts. Sitting in on these meetings and being the kind of the new guys to the show, but still voting members. I've relied pretty heavily on a lot of the information you all have put together, and it gives me a lot of confidence to be able to say many of the things that I say and vote the way that I do, and have no problem voting how I have and speaking for it. So I've said it before, but I don't know where we'd be without the three of you, and I mean that, because we would be in deep. Don't have the 12 years of knowledge and experience, and so what you all have put together has been awesome. One last thing, a raptor, according to Webster, is a carnivorous medium to large sized bird such as a hawk, eagle, owl, or vulture that has a hooked beak and large sharp talons and feeds wholly or chiefly on meat taken by hunting. Also usually a small to medium sized predatory dinosaur. So maybe that's when they talk about restoring lands back to their natural states, it has something to do with the dinosaurs. I'm not sure.
Interesting. Any other comments, commissioners?
Bill doesn't answer the question, so Danielle, you better legally research that one.
Mr. Chairman, one thing, socioeconomics will be, there was a point in that letter, those will be added in. And just for the benefit of the public again, I've spoken about this several times, but we saw ad valorem taxes last year at 8.5 million. And they said there'll be a 74% reduction in that. So it goes from 8.5 to 2.9. And guess who gets to see the biggest chop of that? The schools. Yes. Sweetwater County specifically, so our budget, we received 2.8 million in production ad valorem last year. That would go down to $736,000. So that'll affect our budget. Now that's just oil and gas. That's not including some of the other restrictions that are in here. And you got to also, what it doesn't take into effect is the oil and gas support service businesses and who's going to shut down because there's no longer any oil and gas businesses to support. So that has a trickle effect, and that's difficult to calculate, but it's just something important to remember. This is just the tip of the iceberg. That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
With that, thanks all for being on here. Do we need to have a special meeting? How are you feeling about the upcoming deadline?
So, Mr. Chairman, if you're okay with it, I'm okay with waiting until the 16th to meet based on just our discussions today. Well, I'll put it on the agenda. Just the concern I always get into is getting documentation to Sally to make sure that, it can be available. I think by next Friday, I would like to have something done and complete because, it's cutting it a little bit way too close. I'd like to have it done this week if I can. We'll see what happens, but I think we're okay with that.
One, I think, given the significance and importance of this, we can have you on the agenda, and if you're still working up to that time frame, if we need to, amend, or it'll be included in the packet eventually anyway, as far as, public accessibility, but I think we can make some exceptions so you don't have to feel like, you need it by next Monday at 5 p.m.
Okay.
So,
excellent.
but if we do need to have any, additional meetings, I guess we're open to that, but
okay,
if you feel comfortable with that, we'll just plan
okay.
accordingly.
All is good.
Everyone good? Thanks, Danielle, for getting on. Sorry we were a little ahead of schedule, but now we're behind, so we made up for it.
Mr. Chairman, Danielle, if you could hang on for the executive session too.
That does conclude the regular portions of the agenda, commissioners. Last on the agenda is an executive session to discuss pre-decisional, and I'd entertain a motion accordingly.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Richards,
move to enter into executive session.
we have a motion by Commissioner Richards. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Jones. It is unclear if we will be taking action upon coming out, but it is not expected. So with that, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.